Water and soil are the basis of our existence. And yet, the state of these vital resources is deteriorating before our eyes in many regions. The main reasons for this are inappropriate use and pollution. Furthermore, extreme weather events such as heavy rainfall, storms, summer droughts and heat waves are foreseeably going to become more common. This puts additional pressures on water, soil and biodiversity. The question is raised whether these two foundations of life on Earth can continually renew themselves and safeguard biodiversity. In the light of these profound ecological crises, more and more people are getting involved in sustainable development, in politics, business, and a wide range of other areas. Setting the course for future-proof development is difficult, because changes for more sustainable practices call for disruptions in our habitual patterns of thought and behavior. A possible starting point might be talking about problems in how we engage with the environment rather than environmental problems. This is uncomfortable. It's not only of concern that we imagine futures as open, with uncertainties and risks, it is also a matter of facing questions about our responsibilities, potential fields of action, and possibilities to shape the future. Everyone can help to initiate the necessary changes. This film is intended to suggest some ways forward on how we may get better at discerning our spheres of influence. We shall present a set of 3 different future scenarios for dealing with water and land in Luxembourg in 2045. These result from the interdisciplinary research project NEXUS FUTURES, supported by the Luxembourg Ministry for the Environment, Climate and Sustainable Development and the University of Luxembourg. More than 60 interviews with experts, decision makers and stakeholders from water and agriculture, environmental protection and non-governmental associations were analysed. There were also the results of 7 workshops, each with 30 to 50 participants. Assumptions about the range of plausible future developments of our climate are based on the reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is how, with the involvement of many and varied voices, 3 disparate but equally plausible future scenarios emerged. Does society look to technology for solutions? Is the focus on human well-being and the common good, or is top priority given to environmental protection and regeneration? The scenarios show us that the future depends heavily on the interplay of culture, technology and environment. Used as a set, they offer new perspectives for possibilities, how we might shape our common futures. And the future is open. As such, the scenarios do not offer forecasts or particularly desirable developments. The future will likely comprise elements of all 3 scenarios. The Smart Sustainability scenario portrays a world of rapid technological innovation in which artificial intelligence has assumed a broad range of control and decision-making functions. Recycling and resource-saving management are crucial for society. However, the condition of water, soil and air have reached an all-time low, further due to economic and population growth. Inequitable distributions are producing ever deeper societal rifts and simmering tensions. In the common good scenario, politics and economics are very much regionalized and are organized in a large extent in the form of a sharing economy, such that the common use of goods is the norm. The importance of national institutions in comparison to regional ones is low. This means that local water and soil resources are used and protected more sustainably. Infrastructures are largely decentralized. Rivalries between most regions are high. In the Web of Life scenario, the availability of water and food is repeatedly threatened by global crises. A simple lifestyle geared towards securing our own existence as part of a web of life is the social model. In politics, environmental protection is more important than decision power over one's own private property or to personal development. The scenarios are best used together as a set to illustrate relevant and plausible cornerstones, as well as risks and trade-offs within a vast breadth of possible future developments. A wide range of materials have emerged. These should now be put to practical use as a basis for more structured exchanges about these important issues of concern to us all, whether in workshops, in the classroom, or privately. Next, we shall present all 3 future scenarios in more detail. Please continue to watch. Come and join us for this journey through time. The coronavirus pandemic has demonstrated how susceptible to crises our globally networked society is. But it has also shown how quickly we can implement fundamental changes. Rules, rights, and obligations, as well as our lives and communities, were turned inside out in just a few months. What if an environmental crisis brought similarly profound changes in how we engage with water, soil, and biodiversity? First, let's take a look at the key assumptions about plausible futures, which are shared by all 3 scenarios. After that, we shall home in on the 3 disparate scenarios. The purpose of the scenarios is that each of us can think about the areas in which we can bring about changes in how we engage with water and soil, whether alone, as part of an organisation, or in cooperation with others. They help us better to understand our sphere of influence, the transactional domain, and to discuss it through future-oriented questions. Why should we and how could we save water and reduce pollution? How can we change our consumption or forms of water treatment? How can we get involved politically, at work, or in a local community? The scenarios also clarify which areas in our contextual environment we can only influence to a limited extent or not at all. These are also conditions shaping our dealings with water and soil. Examples include global technological developments, changes in weather patterns or geopolitics, and power structures. Luxembourg is therefore exposed to many forces of change. We need to familiarise ourselves better with 5 of these forces because they change the way we engage with water and soil, whether we like it or not. In the 3 scenarios, these forces, or drivers of change, had very different effects and ensured that each individual's opportunities to participate and shape our own environments were very different. First, distribution of power and role of the nation-state. What role do great powers like the USA, Russia, or China play? Are important resources such as energy and water controlled by a few people, or are they managed in a decentralized manner? Are there more wars? It is likely that the state budget will need to be fundamentally restructured due to growing deficits. This also changes the role of the state. The coronavirus pandemic in the early 2020s was just the beginning of a long series of new and unexpected demands on the welfare system. The precise ways in which government revenues and expenditures were restructured and who gained or lost influence as a result, in these ways, the 3 scenarios differ sharply from each other. Second, world trading system and economy. Will global free trade agreements still apply in 2045, or will the economy be organised more regionally? What values are reflected in prices and production methods? What is the relationship between the economy and the government? What is certain is that a circular economy will emerge in which material flows are increasingly networked and less waste is generated. But what is going on behind the scenes in this economy? According to which principles are salaries and jobs allocated, prices and values determined, and decisions made? Here, the 3 scenarios depict very different developments. Third, technological innovation and the role of science. Which ethical principles are technological innovations subject to? Towards whose needs is innovation oriented? How close to nature are new approaches to solutions to supply problems? Will smart technologies increasingly take over decision-making? And is new knowledge about promoting sustainability increasingly generated locally together with scientists, companies, and citizens? It is very likely that we shall be virtually networked to an even greater extent, and that artificial intelligence will play an even greater role in how we think and act. How exactly the roles are divided between people and learning machines in business and society depends, however, on the respective value systems. These are very different across the 3 scenarios. Fourth, social structures and values. How is our society made up, in Luxembourg and Europe? Are new forms of community emerging virtually networked regionally or locally in municipalities? How do we spend our free time? In citizens' groups, associations, families, or alone? How much free time do we have anyway? And what makes life worth living? One thing is certain: immigration will continue to diversify society. But how will Luxembourg deal with it? Open or selective? Fifth, changes in the environment. To what extent will natural disasters, environmental pollution and scarcity of resources limit options for action? The potential impacts of climate change play out similarly across the three scenarios, but in each world, society is organized in a different way, and its infrastructure is different. The increase in extreme weather events, such as heat, storms and drought as a result of climate change, therefore has different consequences. Now to the three future scenarios, our kit of ideas that helps us to think out of the box. The year is 2045. Changes in climate, environment, geopolitics, economy, technology, demographics, society and culture are happening faster and faster. How could our dealings with water, land and nature as a whole have changed? Was it due to changing circumstances, or was it proactively shaped by us? The smart sustainability scenario is characterized by globally coordinated and rapidly advancing technological innovation. Prosperity is driven by economic growth and consumption. Online transaction taxes constitute the main source of public revenue. Around the world, economic and political interests function together like clockwork. They are the motor of a global economy that aims to reduce material flows and waste through technological innovation. Large multinational companies shape the fight against climate change themselves as a result of environmental rules and regulations such as emissions trading. Artificial intelligence and learning machines control a wide range of economic and social domains, subjecting them uncompromisingly to the dictates of efficiency. Among the 1.2 million inhabitants of Luxembourg, experts in energy, material flows and industrial design enjoy considerable influence. Amongst the rest of the population, convenience and dullness dominate. Inequality in incomes and opportunities are also growing rapidly. Whilst the costs of water and food rise steadily, resource-saving technologies are thus not available to everyone. Technological progress, driven by competition, marches on. Many people and nature get left behind. Increasing population and economic activities are inexorably driving the construction of ever more homes, offices and industrial plants. The sealed land area is growing by 0.5 hectares per day. Areas of housing and roads continue to expand, increasingly displacing forests and arable and undeveloped areas. 5 smart, highly digitalized development centers, which are particularly important for economic development, have emerged. 432,000 people live there, that is 36% of the population. Access to high-speed internet varies greatly across geographical locations and is mainly concentrated in these centers. There are also 10 other development centers in which a further 30% of the population is concentrated. Most jobs and shops are also located in the cities, particularly in Luxembourg City. They are all close to the city, meaning that urban sprawl has increased greatly. Luxembourg's ecosystems are more fragmented than anywhere else in Europe. The increasing water consumption and other ecosystem services, such as the breaking down of pollutants, water retention, and the maintenance of healthy populations of pollinating insects, are becoming a challenge. Although with the help of new technologies water is being used more efficiently in both households and industry, the average water consumption per day of Luxembourg, with 1.2 million inhabitants, is 180,000 cubic meters, corresponding to 145 litres per person. In summer, consumption can reach 200 litres per person per day. Taking care of water in everyday life is not a priority. As a result, all sewage treatment plants need to be equipped to treatment level 4 for the elimination of micropollutants. Much of the water in Luxembourg comes from the Upper Sur Reservoir. Some springs have also been made usable. However, these only cover 10% of consumption. Summary. First, declining soil quality and loss of biodiversity reduce nature's capacity to filter water, break down pollutants, and retain water. Second, the volume of micro and nanopollutants is increasing rapidly. New technologies for water purification need continually to be developed. This also leads to water price increases. Third, high levels of water extraction from the natural environment and changes in the seasonal distribution of precipitation further increase the burden on ecosystems. Fourth, ever-increasing and insufficiently differentiated water prices for households in reality subsidize water prices charged to industry. This is one of many factors helping to cause rampantly growing inequalities. In the common good and knowledge scenario, regional initiatives largely replace the world trading system. As a result of budget deficits, governments are less and less able to provide infrastructure and welfare services for the population. This also applies to water and energy supplies. In addition, national pension, health and education services are augmented by regional initiatives, often supported by volunteers. Most hospitals and schools are also regionally organized. Luxembourg is split into 5 regions, which have grown from fusions of existing groupings in areas like water supply and waste disposal. The contributions of committed citizens, compensating for failures of supply at a time of crisis, are also essential for their well-being. The widespread introduction of local currencies like the Biki in Bekarich in 2013 have stimulated the development of healthy regional economies. For most of Luxembourg's 930,000 residents, personal well-being, resulting from dignity and security, data protection for example, are a priority. Local political participation is also an important aspect. The motto is, greed is bad for you. It has been realized that ensuring good nutrition requires healthy soils, biodiversity and local water sources. Regional resources are highly valued and their use is optimized. Local cohesion is growing. However, differences and rivalries between regions are on the increase. National, centralized infrastructures are neglected. They fail ever more regularly. The inhabitants of Luxembourg are spread across 5 semi-independent regions, which are based, amongst other things, on historically developed groupings of water suppliers and on the natural borders of river basins. Some of these regions also extend beyond the national borders. Some regions cooperate in the supply of ecosystem services, such as drinking water and food production. As an example, Luxembourg City depends on the surrounding areas for water and energy supplies. For the most part, however, the rivalries between the regions are growing, and urbanization is primarily concentrated in 5 centres. Around 15% of the population live in each of the north, east and west of Luxembourg and in Luxembourg City, respectively. The south is by far the most densely populated, with 40% of the population. The ceiling of soil related to urban development has, however, not increased in years. Companies that recycle and reuse products and waste, as well as repair centres and local value-adding production facilities, form the economic basis of a regional circular economy. This is mostly based on cooperatives in which every locally active citizen has a voice. Water treatment and use are organised at the river basin level. Luxembourg consumes an average of 160,000 cubic metres of drinking water per day, corresponding to 170 litres per person. Domestic water circuits are regionally adapted and varied. Many larger towns recover nutrients from sewage treatment plants and use them to produce energy, for example. River water obtained from riparian zones is used for agricultural irrigation, especially during the hot summers. The upper sewer reservoir is slowly becoming less important for the domestic water supply. Rainwater usage takes place on an informal basis, privately and communally, and is regulated either badly or not at all. In addition, many sources have been restored to use. These cover 25% of the demand. Summary. First, neglect of the infrastructure increasingly leads to burst pipes. The water supply is unreliable and prone to failure. Second, high levels of extraction of water from the environment and changes in the seasonal distribution of precipitation are also increasing the strain on ecosystems. Third, drinking water prices vary greatly between regions, creating tensions. In the web of life scenario, regeneration of the environment is the priority, such that any right to free decisions about private property and personal development is increasingly undermined, in spite of the tensions that this creates within society. Agriculture, environment, water and spatial planning policies are closely interwoven and aim to ensure that every citizen can guarantee their own self-sufficiency, alone and in exchange with others. Everyone is thus prepared to face even the worst supply crises. 850,000 people live in Luxembourg, the green oasis at the heart of Europe. With the Resilience Lux mobile app, every citizen contributes to the flow of data on the current condition of water, soil and biodiversity locally. So, everyone has a basis for making decisions about their own behaviour. This data also feeds into political decisions at the national level. Most people are employed in the green finance and tourism sector in the production of natural materials, for example, for the construction sector, and in the manufacture of technologies for the reduction of pollutants. The design criteria for most products, manufacturing processes and services includes contributions to biodiversity regeneration and carbon storage. Meanwhile, the construction sector in Luxembourg specialises in the recycling of old building materials, using Lego logic, amongst other things. Rubble is considered a folly of the past. The high levels of taxation of goods and services, which are mainly handled by artificial intelligence and robots, fund an optional basic income in several EU countries, including Luxembourg. The awareness of the importance of biodiversity for securing human livelihoods defines the forms of innovation and progress. The maintenance of complex urban and rural ecosystems with high levels of biodiversity is, however, the most time-consuming activity of all. In order to receive the basic income, individuals have to work at least 20 hours a week in regenerative activities. Examples of this include composting, the growing and processing of fruit and vegetables, including via agroforestry practices, shepherding and knitting clothes. A record of which of these activities are currently in demand is kept in a seasonally updated list. A feeling of connection with animals and plants, light, air and earth brings meaning to people's lives. Active participation in the rebuilding of a dense network of life makes it easier to forego highly valued former freedoms and a high degree of individuality. In this scenario, a central inhabited band stretches along the Alzette River, which connects two metropolitan areas called Nordstadt and Zuidstad with the capital. It is home to almost 90% of the population, around 750,000 people. Communities and business locations are crowded into this band. Investments in an integrated energy, information and water supply network have been concentrated there for decades. As a result of a large number of wildlife bridges and renatured river sections and roads, this area appears less densely populated than it actually is. A transport system including a monorail and flying taxis limit the environmental impact of mobility. Public transport and traffic options for cyclists and pedestrians between Luxembourg City and the surrounding country areas have been greatly improved. Apart from a few exceptions, cars are not allowed in the central band. Garden areas interwoven with agricultural areas flank the inhabited band. Soils have been revitalized through agroforestry practices, permaculture and intensive enrichment with compost. There are also allotments available to citizens on the basic income for their own production. In the rural zone beyond this area, only limited transport and supply systems are maintained. Water and energy are thus much more expensive there. A wild area extends beyond the garden area in the east and west of the country. It is mainly used by itinerant shepherds and their sheep and goats. There are only a few cattle left as people's meat consumption has been greatly reduced. There are a few scattered areas allowing for simple forms of nature tourism. Water bodies have been regenerated and are protected. The use of surface water from rivers and springs is kept to a minimum. The average daily per capita water consumption is 125 litres. Flows of water and nutrients are organised in biological cycles. Water for technological and industrial purposes is expensive, and its supply is combined with district heating or cooling in closed cycles. The use of rainwater, both private and municipal, is strictly regulated. In addition, some natural water sources have been returned to serviceability. Water prices are seasonal and vary according to volume. Drinking water is more expensive than industrial water. Summary. First, local vegetable production, especially for personal use, consumes a lot of water. Second, the use of water is regulated by a complicated management system, based, among other things, on citizen participation in data collection.
Surveillance of one's neighbours is widespread, almost like in an informant society.
Third, ecosystems are recovering, but at the expense of human freedom. Conclusions and next steps. The three very different scenarios offer a new systemic framework for future-oriented dialogues on how we should engage more sustainably with water and land with diverse interest groups. The scenario set highlights how various values, such as a focus on technology and efficiency, the common good and our relationship to nature, contribute to determining our future. These values shape which ideas about progress and the good life shape the intentions and actions of individual citizens and organizations. We can use the scenario set together in workshops with diverse stakeholder groups to discern future-oriented areas of concerted action for a sustainable engagement with water and land. The scenarios are particularly helpful when meeting with different interest groups to discuss a variety of concepts, views, and evaluations of different options for action or developments, also with respect to existential risks that we would all wish to avoid. This can help with sharing practical knowledge so that we can cooperate to change the broader system within which we are actors. We cordially invite you to take part in this.